in permanently denuclearizing or permanently ending a nuclear weapons program in Iran.
In a dramatic and unusually candid press exchange that has sent ripples through diplomatic circles on both sides of the Atlantic, U.S. Vice President JD Vance issued a blistering, two-pronged warning to hardline members of the Israeli cabinet, explicitly rebuking their ongoing public criticism of the newly negotiated Lebanon ceasefire memorandum and their sharp, personal attacks directed at President Donald J. Trump. The vice president's remarks, delivered in response to a pointed query regarding a recent Axios report, not only exposed the raw fractures within the U.S.-Israeli strategic partnership.
This is a bad deal. A very, very bad deal. It's the deal of the century for Iran.
But also laid bare the deepening schism between the White House and the far-right flank of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's coalition government, a faction that has vehemently opposed any diplomatic off-ramp with Hezbollah in favor of unrelenting military pressure along the volatile blue line. The core dispute, Lebanon MOU and Netanyahu's stated frustration at the heart of the controversy, lies a confidential, non-binding memorandum of understanding, MOU, brokered by American mediators, which outlines a phased de-escalation framework for southern Lebanon. The agreement, which reportedly includes provisions for the withdrawal of Israeli Defense Forces, IDF, from certain border positions, the enforcement of UN Security Council Resolution 17-1, and the disarmament of Hezbollah's military infrastructure near the Israeli frontier, has drawn fierce opposition from several influential ministers in Jerusalem. The Axios report, which Vance directly referenced, claimed that Prime Minister Netanyahu was fuming over the terms of the deal and that Israel did not consider itself legally or operationally bound to its stipulations, a position that, if maintained, would effectively torpedo the fragile diplomatic process before its implementation. In his rebuttal, Vance carefully navigated the diplomatic tightrope, acknowledging that while he had not personally witnessed such frustration in his direct conversations with Netanyahu, subtly suggesting that the Prime Minister might be articulating a more combative stance to his domestic base than to his American interlocutors, he nonetheless seized the opportunity to deliver a searing indictment of the coalition's broader conduct. "Maybe he's saying something to somebody else that he's not saying to me," Vance remarked, a pointed observation that hints at the dual-track communication strategy often employed by Netanyahu to balance Washington's expectations with the unyielding demands of his ultranationalist partners. A strategic wake-up call, the geopolitical reality check delivering what can only be described as a geopolitical ultimatum. Vance emphasized two overarching realities that he believes the Israeli cabinet must internalize without delay. The first, framed with stark simplicity, is that Donald J. Trump remains the only head of state in the entire world who currently extends unequivocal, sympathetic strategic backing to the nation of Israel amid a hostile international environment. At a time when European capitals are increasingly critical of Israeli military operations in Gaza and Lebanon, when Russia has aligned itself with Iran and Syria, and when China has adopted a conspicuously neutral but commercially driven posture, the United States, under Trump's leadership, stands as Israel's singular, indispensable ally among the global powers. The vice president's message was unmistakable. To squander this unique relationship through petty domestic political grievances is an act of strategic self-sabotage that borders on the reckless. "If I was in the cabinet of the Israeli government," Vance asserted with palpable exasperation, "I might not be attacking the only powerful ally that I have anywhere left in the entire world." The fiscal and industrial reality. U.S. taxpayer investment in Israeli defense, the second component of Vance's admonition, was grounded in hard, quantifiable data, a powerful rejoinder to those Israeli officials who have insinuated that Washington's support is either insufficient or conditional. According to the vice president's carefully parsed statistics, over the preceding 3-month period, spanning from late winter to the present spring, fully 2/3 of the defensive weapons systems and munitions that have shielded Israeli airspace and border communities have been manufactured in American defense plants and financed by the hard-earned tax dollars of the American public. This figure encompasses a vast array of critical military hardware, including advanced Tamir interceptors for the Iron Dome system, which have been instrumental in neutralizing thousands of short-range rockets launched from Lebanon and Gaza. Stunner and Skyceptor missiles for the David Sling system, designed to counter medium-range ballistic threats, as well as precision-guided munitions and intelligence-sharing infrastructure that underpin the IDF's tactical superiority in urban and asymmetric warfare. To contextualize this data, analysts note that the United States has historically provided Israel with over $3.8 billion in annual military aid under the terms of the 2016 Memorandum of Understanding, a figure that has been supplemented by multiple emergency supplemental appropriations in the wake of the October 7 attacks, totaling additional billions in expedited arms transfers. Vance's invocation of the two-thirds statistic is a pointed reminder that Israeli military resilience is not self-sustaining. It is fundamentally underwritten by American industrial capacity, logistics, and congressional goodwill, all of which are jeopardized when senior Israeli officials engage in public vitriol against the sitting U.S. president. Internal Israeli politics, the far-right faction and coalition fragility. Crucially, Vance made a deliberate and calculated distinction between Netanyahu himself and the more extremist elements of his coalition. By giving the prime minister credit for not participating in the personal attacks, the vice president implicitly acknowledged the acute domestic pressure that Netanyahu faces from his far-right allies, namely Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich and National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, both of whom have publicly derided the Lebanon deal as a surrender to terror and have threatened to bolt the coalition if the agreement proceeds. These hardline figures, who command significant sway within the Knesset and have deep roots in the settler movement, view any diplomatic engagement with Hezbollah, even a U.S.-brokered one, as a betrayal of their maximalist security doctrine, which advocates for preemptive strikes and permanent military occupation of buffer zones in southern Lebanon. Netanyahu, ever the political survivor, is thus caught in a precarious bind. On one side, the White House demanding diplomatic restraint and adherence to the MOU. On the other, his own coalition partners threatening governmental collapse and early elections should he acquiesce to American demands. The Iranian shadow, the real existential threat. Vance's concluding remarks sought to reframe the entire debate by redirecting the Israeli cabinet's focus toward what he characterized as the genuine existential menace confronting the Jewish state, the sprawling Iranian nuclear and proxy network that envelops the region. He explicitly admonished that the problem for Israel is not Donald J. Trump, and urged any Israeli official who believes otherwise to wake up and smell the reality of the situation. This is a clear reference to Tehran's ongoing uranium enrichment at near-weapons-grade levels, reportedly up to 60% purity, its burgeoning stockpile of advanced centrifuges, and its extensive web of proxies, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, the Houthis in Yemen, and various Shiite militias in Syria and Iraq, that collectively constitute a multi-front encirclement. The vice president's message is that dissipating political capital on internal bickering with the United States only serves to distract from the paramount imperative of containing Iran's regional ambitions and nuclear aspirations, which have only accelerated despite years of sanctions and military interdiction. Implications for broader Middle East stability. Analysts and diplomatic observers in Washington and Tel Aviv have interpreted Vance's blunt intervention as a signal that the Trump administration is losing patience with Israel's internal discord and is prepared to leverage its substantial military aid package as a coercive tool if necessary. While the vice president stopped short of threatening an outright suspension of weapons shipments, a step that would be historically unprecedented and politically explosive, his emphasis on the American taxpayer as the ultimate financier of Israeli security serves as an implicit warning that continued intransigence could trigger congressional reviews, holds on pending arms sales, or a recalibration of the strategic dialogue. Moreover, the broader implications for Lebanon are profound. Should Israel's cabinet reject the MOU and resume large-scale airstrikes on Beirut's residential neighborhoods, a tactic that Vance earlier noted with frustration, the entire ceasefire framework would collapse, likely triggering a full-scale regional war involving Hezbollah's estimated 150,000 rockets, Iranian retaliation, and the potential involvement of U.S. naval assets in the eastern Mediterranean. Such a conflagration would not only devastate Lebanese civilian infrastructure, but also threaten to draw in additional actors, including Syria and potentially Turkey, destabilizing an already fractured Middle East. The vice president's insistence that we're going to work together and actually see this deal to completion reflects the administration's firm commitment to de-escalation, yet his caveat that he will not entertain hypotheticals that could torpedo the agreement leaves the door open for unspecified consequences should Israeli recalcitrance persist. Conclusion: a defining test of alliance resilience. In the final analysis, JD Vance's unscripted and impassioned statement constitutes one of the most direct public rebukes of a friendly foreign government by a senior U.S. official in recent memory, a testament to the gravity of the current diplomatic impasse. It encapsulates the fundamental tension that has long defined the U.S.-Israel relationship, the strategic interdependence that binds the two nations, set against the growing divergence in tactical and political calculations. As the days unfold, all eyes will be on Prime Minister Netanyahu and his coalition partners to gauge whether they will heed Vance's warning and temper their criticism, or whether they will double down on their opposition, potentially precipitating a crisis in bilateral relations that could reshape the geopolitical landscape of the Levant for years to come. One thing is certain: the era of unconditional, unquestioned American backing may be giving way to a new, more transactional paradigm, one in which loyalty, gratitude, and strategic alignment are not taken for granted, but explicitly demanded and rigorously enforced.